Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about books that made me fall in love with the romance genre. So these are up here for different reasons. They might be the best books that I read last year. They might have made me cry, or they just made me realize things about my reading taste that I think are very important to how I read going forward and what I like and what that says about my reading taste. So a lot of these books I have talked in ad nauseum before on my channel, so if you are a longtime viewer, you probably have heard me rave about these books, but if you are new here, these are books that shaped what the kind of reader I am is. So let's get into it. So the first book that I want to talk about is Marrying Winterbourne by Lisa Kleypas. This is the second book in the Ravenel series, and this is actually not my favorite in the series, but I have this on my list because this was the first time I truly fell in love with historical romance. I am not generally someone that likes the sort of tropes and feelings that historical romance would seem to give on the surface, but something about the setting and the feeling of historical romances in general just really hits me in my heart. I think that they are a source of comfort for me when generally I turn to books for a lot of angst and a lot of feeling. And while historical romance can give you that feeling, there are certain authors that are very angsty. I feel a sense of comfort reading them regardless, and I don't quite know how to describe that. Maybe if you're a historical romance reader, you will understand where I'm coming from, but this book just really made me feel so comforted, and I think that Winterbourne is a fantastic hero. But this is basically about Helen and Winterbourne, and Helen is the oldest daughter in the Ravenel family. Her brother has recently died, and her brother's widow is now married to her cousin. And in the first book of this series, they have a very tender moment where Winterbourne and her cousin are involved in an accident that results in Winterbourne being really gravely injured, and Helen has to nurse him back to health. And this is a very pivotal moment in their relationship, and the book actually ends with them getting engaged and then calling the engagement off, and this book picks up with them deciding to carry on with this engagement. They feel a lot of strong feelings for each other. Winterbourne is like the definition of a daddy in historical romance. He's fantastic. He's very broody. He's very rich. He pulled himself up from the bootstraps, and he has always aspired to marry a noble woman so that he can prove that he is worthy of the ton's attention. And he loves Helen. He's obsessed with Helen. There is a part that I dog-eared right here where he is doing some groveling, and the things that this man says and does is just perfection. I loved this second book, and I think that it really showed me how much I love and how much comfort I can get from historical romance. So then we have the novella that introduced me to novellas, that introduced me to this author, and one of my favorite forms of storytelling, and that is Go Deep by Rilsey Adams. So this is a friends to lovers story about a woman who is an erotica writer, and she is losing her inspiration. So she asks her longtime best friend to help her out, and they have this sexual relationship that kind of breeds into feelings of more, and this was incredibly sexy. Rilsey Adams writes the same length novellas as this one, and she just is able to capture human emotion and human connectivity so well that you just immediately feel like they are a real and believable couple. There is a restaurant scene in this that I just think about all the time, and I bring up every time I talk about this book. And something that I never care about, there is actually a prologue novella that is their wedding called Deeper, and I absolutely loved this. It was so sweet to see. I don't generally care about couples in love being happy. That's not what I read romance for. I read for the love, but I want to see the struggle of them getting there. So usually stories of people just being in love is not really my thing, but I just loved seeing this couple again. I love being with this couple and just like seeing their love. It was just perfect. So then I want to talk about a book that introduced me to another level of angst. So the angst that I was enjoying was like the bully, the crude, the gritty, the dark feelings, the being mean to each other, and the angst on that level. And this book really introduced me to angst and emotion on a different level that I could enjoy. And that is The Air He Breathes by Brittany C. Cherry. I love Brittany C. Cherry. I have read her entire Elements series and several of her other standalone books, and I've given most of them 4 or 5 stars. This is the first book in the Element series. It's probably my favorite, even though that's an unpopular opinion. The hero has just recently lost his wife and his daughter, and the hero has lost her husband. She moves in with her daughter next door to him, and he is like the town pariah. Everybody thinks he's sort of a jerk, and she is determined to help him. She recognizes the grief that he is going through, and she feels like they can help each other. And so they enter into this relationship where they're sort of using each other to fill the void of that their partner left. And so when they're having sex, they're picturing their old spouse, like their deceased spouses and things like that. And then eventually the relationship between them actually grows. This is absolutely so beautiful. I think that something that Brittany C. Cherry does so well is love after grief, or love with grief rather. And watching the hero dealing with the feelings of not feeling like he is supposed to fall in love again after the death of his wife, and also not feeling like he should have a family after the death of his daughter, is so beautiful to watch. This relationship is just gorgeous, and I think that this opened my eyes to not only Brittany C. Cherry, but the fact that these deep emotional romances are something that I can absolutely love. So to completely change the vibe, I have 2 books by the same author that I think really changed the way that I view dark romance, and that is The Heir by Sophie Lark and There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark. So I will start with The Heir, which is the first of these 2 that I read. So this is the first book in the Kingmakers series by this author. It is the spinoff of her Brutal Birthright series, which I did read and wasn't a super big fan of, but this one is about their kids, and they are going to this place called Kingmakers, which is basically like a mafia school. These kids go to this island off the coast of Croatia, and it's a very dog eat dog world. Anything eye for an eye. If you hurt someone, you get hurt back, that sort of thing, and it's very cutthroat. And this first book is following a love triangle between personally one of my favorite characters. We are following Dean, Anna, and Leo. And Anna and Leo were childhood best friends. They kind of grew up together. They call each other cousin, but they're not actually blood related. And then Dean is the enemy to Leo's family. I love Dean. His book is my favorite in this series, but I think the thing that this book in particular did for me is opened my mind to larger worlds in romance. I know that sounds silly because you have fantasy romance that are grand and sweeping and intense, but usually you have very confined stories. Usually with mafia stories, they might follow the same family or something, but this one is just a whole network of people, of lives, of events taking place. It's not just this very insular romance with not a lot going on. There is so much here. There's so much to grab onto, and I love that even if you don't necessarily love one couple in the series, you find your place with them and then with everybody else. So if you didn't necessarily like Leo and Anna's story, maybe you'll like Dean and his love interest story, So I think this just opened my eyes to this author and to just very broad romances, if that makes sense. So then we will talk about There Are No Saints. This is about Mara and Cole, and in the beginning of this, Cole is this very affluent artist who has a rival named Shaw. And they are both serial killers. Shaw is much more of a sociopath, so he's very unhinged. He doesn't really plan his killings. He's very much impulsive. And then Cole is a psychopath, very cold and controlling. He very much does it with a purpose, and they are rivals. And in the beginning of the book, Shaw sees Cole noticing Mara at this art event, and he decides that he's going to use Mara to mess with Cole. And Mara is like this really down on her luck artist who lives in like this shitty attic apartment, and she's like working multiple jobs so that she can like be an artist. That's what she really wants to do. And after this event with Cole and Shaw happens, Cole becomes obsessed with Mara, and he offers her studio space to kind of reel her in, and he becomes obsessed with Mara. He like rents an apartment across the street from the apartment that she's in, so he can look through her window. He like breaks into her apartment and like sniffs her stuff and like jizzes in her panties. Like, he's just completely unhinged, and the progress of seeing Mara come into her own is just beautiful. Like, I think that their relationship is fantastic. It definitely has like those thriller aspects to it. It's very much a Joe from You vibes, but like as if Mara was actually into it and plays into the games. It's very, very fun, and I think this is very different from Sophie Lark's other works, and it just shows how talented that she really is. So next up we have what you could say is my absolute all-time favorite romance. This book got me into romance. This author got me into romance. And that is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. Punk 57 was actually the first Penelope Douglas that I read, but I only gave that one 4 stars. I've since like changed my mind about it. I've reread it a couple times, but this one is, I think, the long-standing love of my romance life. So this is basically about Jordan and Pike, and in the beginning of the book, they meet in a theater, and after they have a really good time, they're celebrating Jordan's 19th birthday. They get out of the movie theater, and Jordan gets a call from her boyfriend that they have been kicked out of their apartment building. And we flash forward to Jordan moving in with her boyfriend's father, who is Pike, the man that she just had this fantastic connection with in the movie theater. And this starts like this back and forth between Jordan and Pike, and it's just absolutely beautiful. Like, their relationship is so fantastic. You have Jordan, who has always felt like she has to be the responsible one. She can never cut loose. She's never wanted like this big grandiose life. She's always just wanted to have a career that she loves and have a family and have a purpose and a place. She's always been cast off by her family and had to make it on her own. And Pike is this older man who has devoted his entire life to his son. He was in a bad relationship that resulted in the birth of his son that has kind of affected Pike's life, and he's sort of living but not alive. He's not really putting any effort into his life. He just goes to work and he comes home. And so they build this like beautiful family together. Their relationship is gorgeous, and like you really understand why they work so well together, and Penelope Douglas did a fantastic job of that. So then we have another romance that I have talked about a ton, and I think this has had one of the biggest changes on my romance reading life, and that is Rush by Brianna Hale. First of all, can we talk about this cover? We love it. This is a rockstar romance, and it's about Dree and Rush, and Dree is a choreographer, and after a bad run-in with another rock star group, she has decided that she's never going to choreograph for anybody else, but she's just gonna like dance for herself. And then Rush sees her in a dance studio one day and comes up to her and basically says, "Hey, I saw the work that you did for this rival band. Can you also choreograph my music video?" She's very reluctant at first, but he says, like, "Give me a chance to convince you." And they start working together, and their relationship is so beautiful. This is a daddy kink book with very, very light age play. Not a whole lot, not super explored, but neither Dree or Rush had a sexual relationship like this. So they're exploring it together. And I think the thing that's beautiful about this is that they never judge each other for what they want. The person will just say, "This is what I want to try," and the other person just tries it. Like, they have no hesitation. They trust the other person, and their relationship is truly gorgeous. I cannot rave about this enough. I know I do it like every video, but this relationship is beautiful. And yes, I have a book that I think I read, and it just like changed the way that I view romance, in that There are books that I go to that I just want to have fun. There are kinks that I've discovered that I love reading about, and that is Degradation. This is an incredibly messy series, and it is about a woman who, in the prologue of the book, hooks up with her sister's fiance, and she ends up getting kicked out of the house. And then some years later they meet again at a party, and he hires her to be like his live-in like sex worker, and he'll pay her like a livable wage basically, and their relationship is messy as fuck. I ended up reading the second book in the series and didn't like it, but this first one, it's fantastic. It has a degradation kink. It's very sexy. I love their relationship dynamic. I think that they fit each other perfectly. Like everything that the hero would want out of a heroine, they fit puzzle pieces together. And it's messy as fuck, but I still really loved it. And then we have Her Soul to Take, which introduced me to like my love of like horror romance. This is not something that I had explored much prior to this. I had read some like retellings and things like that, but this is true horror. So this is about a girl who is like a paranormal investigator. She has her own YouTube channel, and she goes back to her hometown where this like weird stuff is going on, and she gets entrenched in this cult plan, and she ends up summoning a demon, and the demon has every intention of like stealing her soul, and they fall in love. There is like body modifications in this. There's just some beauty. I liked the second one more, but this one definitely introduced me to loving like horror romance. I think it's a fantastic combination. It just like soothes everything in my soul that I want out of a book, and I love it. So then I actually have another historical romance to talk about, and that is Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. So prior to reading Indigo, I had actually read the majority of Beverly Jenkins' backlist when I picked up Indigo, and this felt so different than any of the other Beverly Jenkins that I had read. This is basically about a woman who works on the Underground Railroad, and one day one of her fellow conductors brings this man named the Black Daniel in. He is injured, and she takes care of him, and their relationship is just another one of those beautiful, gorgeous relationships. The hero is so open and communicative about his feelings. He doesn't view any of the heroine's anxieties or traumas as a weakness or anything like that. Anything that he thinks is going to be in his way, he is 100% on board with. However, whenever she wants their relationship to go, and he is just completely enamored with him. And it was truly a beautiful romance. It's one of those romances where the couple is just so consuming that you don't really care about anything else. You don't care about the plot, and that's something that I don't find in other Beverly Jenkins. Most of the time her relationships wrap up like 50%, and then the rest of the book is plot. But I think that this one was just so beautifully done with how much the couple is represented, and the strengths and weaknesses of each person, and how they work to work that out as a couple, and it just like is beautiful. And then the last romance that I want to talk about is, again, another book that I talk about often on my channel, and that is Love Her or Lose Her by Tessa Bailey. This is basically a marriage in trouble story about Rosie and Dominic, and at the beginning of the book, Rosie gets hit on at her work, and she realizes that this was like the first time that she's felt wanted in a long time. So she goes to her husband and says, I want a divorce. Like, the only type of affection and attention I get from you is in the bedroom. And Dom is like very in love with Rosie, and he doesn't want to lose her, so he tells her that he's willing to go to marriage counseling to work this out. And they go to a marriage counselor that basically says like, give me, I think it's like 6 weeks, and at the end of 6 weeks, I will tell you whether your marriage is repairable or not. And so they go into this like weird, intense marriage counseling, and their relationship, again, is so, so beautiful. Dom's just like overpowering love for Rosie is so beautiful to read. Dom is this very like alpha male. He was raised by a very no emotions, boys don't cry man, and then he went into the military, and he saw a lot of his comrades dying. When he came back, he was a different person, and he didn't know how to deal with all of those emotions. He thinks that his only way to show Rosie his love is by supporting her and by, you know, making sure that she has a house and she has food and she can do all of these things that she might want to do. And so that's how he shows his support. But through this marriage counseling, they realize that they're both missing things that they need from the relationship. Rosie is able to express the things that she's been missing and the things that she needs out of Dom, but Dom also realizes that Rosie hasn't been giving him everything that he needs. And there is this beautiful scene where the marriage counselor says something along those lines to Rosie, and Rosie has this moment where she realizes that she is not innocent in the downfall of their relationship, that she hasn't been giving Dom what he needs, and she hasn't been asking him what he needs, and she starts crying, and Dom gets very angry, and he gets very upset, and he tries to tell Rosie, like, I don't need anything, you're perfect, you're everything that I need, like, you're not doing anything wrong, this is not your fault. And there's just so many scenes between the two of them trying to repair their relationship where you just understand that this is a couple that loves each other, and as long as they're working together and as long as they're communicating, like, their relationship can withstand anything. And it just truly is another beautiful relationship. So those are some of the romances that truly changed the way that I read and love romance. So leave your thoughts down below on anything that I talked about or the romances that have deeply impacted you and changed the way that you read and love the genre. I would love to know. Other than that, thanks so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys in my next one.